Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa for your daily news from the continent. I'm Joemil Jamin. Coming up on the show, Mali's ruling junta sets June 18th as the date for a referendum on a new constitution as the country waits on a return to civilian rule. Then after years of service with the French military, Senegalese veterans who had to stay in France to receive a pension will now be free to collect their savings back home. And a precious gem is causing a stir in South Africa as locals demand the British royal family returns the world's largest diamond ahead of King Charles's coronation. Thanks for joining us this evening. After a long-delayed return to civilian rule, Mali's militia junta has announced a referendum on a new constitution set to be held on June 18th. The vote had been scheduled for March, but was postponed indefinitely after jihadist attacks and separatist insurgencies broke out in the impoverished Sahel state. Sophie Lamotte tells us more on this decision.
Initially scheduled in March, the referendum over the new Malian constitution should now take place on June 18th. This referendum is a highly awaited one as it's the first step in following the agreements made between the ECOWAS bloc and Malian authorities last year. Both parties had agreed that Malian authorities who took power after a military coup led by Assimi Goïta in 2020 should transition back to civilian rule by February 2024. Malians will therefore be presented with a new constitution before they take to the polls and either approve or refuse the whole draft. In terms of the content, this draft constitution confers more power to the president than we've seen before. The leader of the country would determine, quote, the politics of the nation. In other words, they would be in charge of naming the prime minister, naming members of parliament, and they would have the power to dissolve parliament. One of the biggest challenges facing this referendum will be on the logistical side in a context where the state struggles to contain jihadist and separatist insurgencies that emerged in 2012 in the country. The question of political unity will also be at the top of the agenda, as some opposition parties have already warned that they would not support the referendum and have rather argued for free and fair presidential elections before any other vote takes place.
As King Charles prepares for his coronation, first on his royal agenda on Friday was a meeting with the heads of government from the Commonwealth. The meeting took place at Marlborough House in central London, the international headquarters of the Commonwealth Secretariat. Amongst the African leaders present were Rwandan President Paul Kagame in his official capacity as chair in office, as well as Liberia's head, Eswatini's king, Malawi's president, Zambia's president, and Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The famed Cullinan Diamond leaving some South Africans enraged. They now demanding the royal family return the jewel they believe was stolen from their land. Caroline Dumay, Stefan Carstens and Nadine Turon with this report.
This is a replica of the biggest rough diamond the world has ever seen. It's the size of a tennis ball, and it was found in South Africa in 1905.
In the beginning, they did not believe that this was a diamond. They first thought it was a piece of glass.
It was named the Cullinan Diamond after the mine's owner and gifted to the British Crown, who had it cut into 9 pieces to be set in the crown jewels. South Africa was a British colony at the time. The Boer farmers suffered a crushing defeat in 1902. More than 30,000 South Africans died in British concentration camps. So when the Transvaal government decided to offer the stone to the crown only 3 years later, many were surprised. This historian says it was probably to curry favour.
And Winston Churchill, who was also a journalist and then a soldier during the Anglo-Boer War, said, no, accept the gift. And so Edward VII accepted the gift on his 66th birthday, but it was only later in 1910 when George V came to the throne that it ended up in some of the crown jewels.
Few South Africans know this story. For many, this famous diamond was stolen, not given away.
The Queen has passed on, may she rest in peace, but you know, the diamond needs to come back, you know.
Think about how you obtained that mineral. Is it good to have it on your crown?
It was the all-white parliaments of the Transvaal colony who made the decision to present a gift that would be worth $400 million today. South African trade unionists suggest compensation.
They could donate an equivalent amount to a worthy South African, project like schools, etc., or they could just return the diamond itself. But I think either way, if they want to have possession of it, there should have been some fair market-related acquisition of it. Otherwise, it gets into the whole murky colonial theft debate and all of that.
The ball is now in the new King of England's court, knowing that his wealth accumulated on the backs of the people of his former empire.
Time for some more news from across the continent. Fighting has continued throughout Sudan on Friday, with civilians trapped in the capital Khartoum. Despite multiple ceasefire declarations, the army and paramilitary appear to have continued wrestling for territory ahead of proposed talks. The United Nations Children's Agency, meanwhile, says more than 1 million crucial polio vaccines have been lost as a result of the violence. Then local officials say more than 100 people have died after heavy rains and flooding in the eastern DRC's South Kivu province. The region's provincial governor has put the figure at 176 deaths as humanitarian workers continue the race to recover as many as possible. And German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has offered support to African countries seeking a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. On a visit to Kenya, Scholz told President William Ruto he believed in African-led solutions to African issues. Currently, just 3 African states, Gabon, Ghana and Mozambique, are non-permanent members of the council. Well, until recently, Senegalese veterans who fought with the French army had to spend at least half the year living in France to collect their military pensions. But thanks to a new law, they can now receive their pay while living full-time in Senegal. Our correspondents Sarah Sako, Eliman Ndao and Sam Bradpiece recently caught up with a veteran who returned last week from France.
Colonel Dieng's family organised a feast to celebrate the occasion. The 88-year-old veteran is revelling in his return to Senegal, where he now lives with his family in the Dakar suburbs. Before Paris passed a new reform in January, he had to spend at least 6 months of the year in France to collect his pension.
I am happy to come back to my family and to be among my people. My entire family is delighted that I've finally returned to Senegal to be with them.
The recent return of Senegalese soldiers to their country of origin is in large part due to Aissata Seck, who runs an association aimed at promoting the rights and the memory of the so-called tirailleurs sénégalais.
We are extremely relieved to have been able to contribute. Seeing them hold their children and their grandchildren in their arms is the best and most beautiful image that we have seen in Senegal.
The colonel's descendants are ecstatic at the return of a man they see as a hero. They now want France to give special status to the children of all tirailleurs.
We are not asking for French nationality, but at the very least we would like to be recognized as the children of veterans, the children of Senegalese riflemen. This recognition would give us more joy than 100 nationalities. We are fine at home, but sometimes we travel. Sometimes it's difficult for us to get a visa.
Colonel Dieng and his comrades were greeted by Senegalese President Macky Sall, who gave them all medals on their return to the country.
As summer approaches in North Africa, so does the problem of drought for farmers. Now in Morocco, 2 organizations are seeking in-house agricultural solutions, working together to develop new cereal varieties that are more resistant to the dry conditions. Caroline Lambolet and Olivia Bizot spread the seed with this story.
Slimani Abdallah is a farmer in Marchouch, near the Moroccan capital. Last year was a difficult year for him and many other farmers in the region because of the rising costs and worsening drought. But he has since started collaborating with a group of international scientists who've been developing more resistant crops.
Everything is more expensive: fertilizers, insecticides, oil. Farmers are really suffering. We are grateful to researchers because they have developed excellent new crops that have been helping us. Their work encourages us to keep going. Without them, farmers would have given up because our old crops no longer yield well.
These new crops were developed by the National Institute for Agricultural Research and the International Centre for Agriculture Research in Dry Areas. Their aim is to develop resilient and sustainable agriculture by crossing traditional seeds with newer varieties. The Moroccan government has already approved 3 of these varieties: Nashit, Jawahir and Jabal.
In the year of drought, these varieties shows a yield of an improved yield of 30% compared to the other varieties, the old varieties. So with this improvement to this food sovereignty, because Morocco, generally when there is these years of drought, we rely on importing cereals from other countries.
In 2022, Morocco's cereal harvest fell by almost 70%, dropping from 10.3 to 3.2 metric tons, making it the poorest harvest the country has experienced in 60 years.
Well, finally, if you've ever been to Senegal, there may be a chance you've tried your luck at catching some waves. But chances were the surfboard was not actually from the country. Now, one local is trying to change that. Caroline Lambolet tells us the story of Pape Diouf.
It's known to surfers across the world. Yoff Beach, in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. It's here that Pape Diouf set up a workshop where he makes surfboards using a mix of local and imported materials.
I started from nothing. At first I was working out of a space that someone let me borrow. After 3 to 4 years of honing my craft, I started a crowdfunding campaign. All my friends took part. I also received subsidies that allowed me to build this space.
Up until now, surfers in Senegal would get their boards from abroad. At only 27, Pape Diouf had a vision, and he's seen it through. 100% Senegalese-made boards, which he sells at a cheaper rate.
The board is suitable for all conditions. It floats and it's really big and wide. It's also easy to handle in the water. It's really such a cool board.
The starting price for a board is 250,000 West African CFA francs, or around $420 US. Diouf says he hopes to bring his prices down a little, but for that, he'll need to source more of his materials locally.
More people need to stop making surfboards in Senegal so that we can show the world that we are capable of making good boards with good sizes.
Pape Diouf has already started receiving orders from abroad, a wave he hopes to keep riding.
And how good do those swells look in Senegal? That's all the news from Africa this evening, but there's more coming up on France 24.